Risks are characterized by the probability and severity of a potential loss that may result from hazards associated with mission requirements, command-organized recreational events, and job-specific activities, as well as everyday life. Risk management is a decision-making tool used to increase operational effectiveness by utilizing a systematic process to identify, assess, and manage risks during pre-mission or event planning. It increases our ability to make informed decisions and minimizes the risks to acceptable levels that correspond with mission accomplishment. Implementation is most effective at the first-line leader level. Risk management is a 5-step process based on 4 overarching principles. Integrate risk management into all phases of missions and operations. Accept no unnecessary risk. Make risk decisions at the appropriate level. Apply risk management cyclically and continuously. Risk management can be implemented at 2 levels, deliberate or real-time, based primarily on time available. Integrate risk management into all phases of missions and operations. Risk is more easily controlled when identified early in the planning process. Leaders must integrate risk management throughout planning, preparation, execution, and assessment activities. Commanders must emphasize the need to conduct thorough risk assessments during pre-mission or event planning processes. They must also dedicate sufficient time, personnel, and other resources to ensure everyone manages risk effectively throughout every phase of an operation, mission, or activity. Accept no unnecessary risk. Only take risks that are necessary to accomplish the mission. Commanders don't need to be risk-averse. Forces may undertake even high-risk endeavors when commanders determine that the sum of the benefits exceed the sum of the costs. Commanders establish the basis for prudent risk decisions through risk management. Make risk decisions at the appropriate level. A risk decision is a commander, leader, or individual's determination to accept or not accept the risks associated with an action he or she will take or will direct others to take. When leaders or individuals responsible for executing a mission or task determine the associated risk cannot be controlled at their level, going beyond that approved by the commander, the decision should be elevated through their chain of command to the proper approval authority. While the risk tolerance may be set within the commander's intent, the commander may choose the best means to give guidance. Apply risk management cyclically and continuously. Risk management is a cyclical and continuous 5-step process applied across all Army operations, including training, individual and collective day-to-day activities, and installation operation functions. Soldiers and Army civilian personnel use this cyclical process to identify and assess hazards, develop, choose, implement, and supervise controls, and evaluate outcomes as conditions change.
The risk management process may be implemented at one of 2 levels, the deliberate level and the real-time level. Deliberate risk management is more analytical when there is ample time to apply the risk management process to the detailed planning of a mission or task. At this level, time is not a limiting factor, and a right answer is required for a successful mission or task.
Army leaders use their judgment to manage risk based on the situation, proficiency level of personnel, and the amount of time and assets available. The Army's military decision-making process is a good example of risk management integrated at the deliberate level. Other examples include planning for major unit training events and morale, welfare, and recreation events. The completed deliberate risk assessment is essential to the development of operational orders, troop leading procedures, pre-mission safety briefs, emergency action plans, and standard operating procedures. While it is preferable to perform a deliberate risk management process when planning all tasks or missions, the time and resources will not always be available.
Real-time risk management is an immediate, on-the-move management of hazards as they occur during the execution of an event or performance of a task, as well as during daily routines both on and off duty. Leaders plan for all anticipated risk, but during execution, new hazards and risks can arise unexpectedly during time-constrained situations, requiring an individual or a team to use intuitive decision-making.
Army personnel may only have time for a quick mental or verbal assessment of the new or changing situation, the hazards they may face, and the control measures needed to ensure each team member can make sound decisions. Real-time risk management comes down to individuals and leaders asking themselves, what's different today? Or what's different right now than what was expected? Real-time and deliberate risk management have the same foundation. Leaders must master the principles and steps of risk management and practice applying them during pre-mission planning and execution, so real-time risk management becomes second nature both on and off duty. 5-step risk management process. Risk management is a 5-step process that includes: Step 1. Identify the hazards. List all hazards associated with each known and implied substep in the mission or task, along with possible causes for those hazards. Causes may include physical conditions of personnel, training and proficiency levels of team members, the physical workspace, status of equipment to be used, the time of day, and the time allotted to complete the task or mission. The MET-TC model serves as a standard format for identifying hazards on or off duty. Tools that are useful in this process may include individual or team experience, regulations, manuals, SOPs and policies, mishap data, wargaming what-if scenarios, previous risk assessments, readiness assessments, cause and effect diagrams or mapping techniques, training assessments, after-action reviews, safety-related websites, and the Joint Risk Assessment Tool. Step 2. Assess the hazards. For each identified hazard, determine the associated degree of risk in terms of probability and severity. Risk levels reflect a combination of the probability of occurrence and the severity of the adverse impact. Probability and severity are independent measures of hazards. In other words, estimating probability has no direct relationship to estimating severity. Use the Army Risk Assessment Matrix to assess hazards. Step 3. Develop controls and make risk decisions. Develop risk control options by starting with the most serious risk and select controls that will reduce the risk to a minimum consistent with mission accomplishment. These measures include a combination of engineering, administrative, and personal protective controls. Engineering controls include equipment or workspace design to eliminate hazards or to reduce the exposure of personnel at risk. Administrative controls include task-specific training, safety briefings, rehearsals, establishing workplace practices, placards, signs, and notices, limiting exposure by planning for relief personnel, rotating personnel, and mandatory rest breaks. Lastly, when units cannot eliminate exposure during normal operations or maintenance work through engineering, and when safe work practices and other forms of administrative controls cannot provide sufficient protection, a supplementary method of controls is the use of personal protective equipment such as body armor, restraints, and skin, hearing, eye, and respiratory protection. When developing controls, the risk assessment team must ensure each control meets certain criteria, which includes the simple acronym SAFE, followed by other criteria of effectiveness. Suitability. Does the control help remove or mitigate the hazard to an acceptable level? Acceptability. Does the benefit gained by implementing the control justify the cost and resources and time? Feasibility. Does your unit have the capability to implement the control? Explicitness. Does each control clearly specify who, what, when, where, why, and how each control will be used? Additional criteria include: standards. Are the guidance and procedures for implementing the control clear, practical, and specified? Training. Do all involved personnel have the necessary knowledge, skills, and experience to effectively implement each control? Leadership. Are all unit leaders competent, ready, willing, and able to enforce standards necessary to implement controls? Individual operators or workers. Are all personnel competent and physically capable of implementing the control? With selected controls in place, decide if the residual risk is acceptable or beneficial. If assistance is required to implement controls, communicate these issues with higher authority in the chain of command. Step 4. Implement controls. Leaders must explicitly communicate to all involved personnel how each control will be implemented and establish who is accountable for managing each control to prevent a mishap. Additionally, leaders must provide support for the implementation of each control. Remember that residual risk assessments are only valid if controls are implemented and maintained. Step 5. Supervise and evaluate. Conduct follow-up evaluations of the controls to ensure they remain in place and have the desired effect. Additionally, monitor for changes that may require further management of risk and take corrective action when necessary. After the mission or task is complete, leaders must seek feedback from the team to determine what went well, what didn't go well and why, and what can be improved upon next time. DD Form 2977s should be maintained with after-action review records in order to assist in planning future-like operations.
Risk management is an integral part of every decision on and off duty. As soldiers and Army civilians, we should continuously assess hazards with our team to ensure the benefit outweighs the risk. Risk management is the Army's process for helping organizations and individuals make informed decisions.
For more information on risk management, refer to ATP 5-19. For questions, contact your local safety office or the U.S. Army Combat Readiness Center.